the secondary product.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I've been shooting a lot of questions to Rajan, and maybe time to take a pause for me. And audience, in case you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Satish?
This one. Yes, please.
So, Rajan, how much of a blueprint of the business you had before you, took the leap, and where you are today, was it part of the blueprint?
Honestly, we did make a blueprint because having worked for these companies, you always have to kind of do a lot of planning. So we did a planning, but we are quite off it. We expected the industry to grow much bigger, much faster, and it hasn't grown as much as we wanted. It's grown reasonably well. I mean, we're okay, but when we started, then I think it's every entrepreneur's right to dream big, right? We were also dreaming very big. We thought it would be $1 billion company, so that doesn't happen to everybody. But yeah, so we had a blueprint, we had a path, but we deviated substantially, not only in numbers, but in the nature and style of business as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes, the question.
Hi, I have a two-part question. First is, I assume that you had a content team already. So initially, in the initial phase, what did it took for you to create a content team? Now that you have a content strategy already, so to have the first cycle of content, and what's the team size, and how did you manage to get the content running?
Sure. So what we did was the first few kind of runs that we had, we actually outsourced it. So there was a group of amateurs. I don't know whether I can call them amateurs. Rather, they were professionals who had been working for companies like Z and all, and they had started a small outfit of their own, right? So we designed the content, but we didn't know how to make it. We didn't know how to sit in front of a computer and make it this thing. So this company actually made it for us. So I think for the first 3 months or so we used them, right? And then slowly we started migrating and started building up our own content team. So this was one company. Similarly, we had a couple of other companies as well. So we initially were outsourcing, and then we pulled it back into the company.
My second part is, how do you measure the viewership? Once you have good content running, then you have to convince the advertisers, right? So how did the advertisers got value? How did you convince the advertisers that we have this number of viewership? How did you measure that?
So very good question, and that's been one of the challenges with our medium, right? Because TV gives you TRPs, radio now gives you RAM, and others. Whereas in there was no real method to measure it. So what we do is we use IMRB. IMRB is one of India's premier research companies to do measurement of the media for us. And they use a very conventional method of exit interviews. So many a times, I don't know if any one of you would have experienced it, but there would be some of their researchers standing outside an outlet, and when you come out, they will accost you with a set of questions. And generally we do research on 4 parameters. The first one is demographics. What kind of people are going to the places where our screens are there, in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of income and all that. Second is on the hygiene factors, whether the screens were off or not, whether they were audible or not, whether they were visible or not. Third is on engagement. How are people consuming that medium? Are they taking glances? If yes, how long, how often, who do they go with? All the kind of. And fourth is at the recall, we do the recall. What all ads did you see? We do a top of the mind recall, we do a unaided recall, and we do a aided recall. So with this, we get the data in terms of the sample size that we have. Then at the next level, at the lower level, we, for example, from McDonald's and many of these partners, we have actual footfalls that they have. I mean, when I say actual, it's in a margin of 20% here or there, but we know how many footfalls they have in a month, in a week, right? So we superimpose the research percentage data on this data of footfalls and other things we have. And as an extrapolation, we get the kind of measurement. It's not perfect, it's not electronic, it's not foolproof, but it gives the advertisers some amount of comfort and some amount of measure on what they're getting in return for what they make us.
Yeah, I think that answers the question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you had a question.
For many, taking funds from friends and family is like a strict no-no. So like since you have done just that, like any experience you'd like to share?
If you can avoid it, avoid it. Because when money comes in between their expectations and so all you can do is make it very, very transparent and objective, right? In terms of telling them what they're getting into, and please tell them that they could lose whatever they're putting. I think that should be the first premise. But if I was to do it next time, and if I was to take, I would do it in a much, I would put everything on pen and paper very, very carefully and do it. And now you have an ecosystem actually. At that time, angel investment wasn't a very kind of structured thing. Now you have angel investors, you have super angels, and you have X and Y and Z. So raising professional money is also not as difficult. And I think it depends actually. You could go for professional money as well.
So you talked about how your industry is becoming more commoditized, and you did things to create channels so that you differentiate yourself. Now in the future, are you also looking at making that medium more interactive so that the audience can actually interact with the television screen? Maybe using a smartphone app where it would become more engaging for them as opposed to just being a passive source of information.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you hit the right this thing. So just to share with you, when we started conceiving LiveMedia, the idea was you have all the ideas and thoughts in your mind, and when we looked at it, we thought we will be like you have the internet, we will be the outer net, right? And I think one day it will happen. And to your point, it may be ambitious for me to talk like this, and it may border on the edges of being a foolhardy, but we see a parallel between internet and what we do. See, in the internet, if you see, the ecosystem is, there are audience, people like you and me. We go to various websites, right? Depending upon our profile and depending upon our location. So if you're in India and you like Hindi songs, you will go to Ghana.com. If you're in Sweden, you will go to a Swedish music, this thing there, depending upon, right? Then there are ad networks, and then there are advertisers, right? So advertisers want to reach out to people of a particular profile in a particular location, right? So they tell the ad networks that here's my ad. Whenever a person of this profile appears on the horizon, slap my ad, okay? And ad networks have a lot of this intelligence, because each time you're on the internet, they will keep sucking this information, and when they see it, they'll slap it. Now, replace the websites with locations where we are present, right? So in our case, you have audiences. Instead of the websites, they are going to different locations. So the profile of people going to McDonald's will be very different than profile of people going to to Costa Coffee. Or people working in Genpact will be very different than people working in Deloitte, right? In terms of the general profile, if we were to bucket